Yes. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Sarvamangala. I can see your message. Okay, yesterday, due to technical constraint, I couldn't finish the lecture session. I hope today it is not going to happen because everything is fine. I hope everything is fine, and I would like to continue the same topic which I did not complete yesterday due to the internet glitches. Okay, and also there was no server, and I disconnected from the lecture session. Okay, yes. So yesterday, the last topic, last literary criticism, which I was discussing was the art of fiction. Okay, I had already spoken about Besant's interpretation of or his opinion about the fiction, okay, regarding the novels, and he had given three is he had three arguments to make to develop to make people understand the importance of fiction, whereas Henry James is of a simple opinion that novel must represent life, and it should interest the audience. Okay, it should interest the audience. It shouldn't because as fiction itself says, it's a lengthy story. It sometimes exceeds to 300 400 plus pages. There is no limitation when it comes to fiction. Short story, drama, it has page limitations. When it comes to novel like fiction, goes around, goes above 500 pages, or at times more than 1000 also. There are novels. Okay, so Henry James argues that a novel, a fiction, must be interesting. At the same time, it should represent life. And yesterday, I was discussing about the three major arguments which Henry James has spoken against, not against, but he has made his claims that how a fiction needs to be developed. Okay, so he says that he equalizes novel and with that of other fine arts or arts, literary arts, that is painting, sculpture, music, okay, poetry, and they are limitless. Okay, there should not have limitations while explaining or experiencing their emotions, the sharing of emotions. There should not be any limitations. That was his first claims, and the second claim is that he rebuked Besant's argument that rules are necessary to guide any form of art. Okay, rules are must. Okay, rules are must. But he that was the argument of Besant, which was not agreed by James. When we look at the uh, when we look through the arguments of James, he has a clear understanding of fiction. Okay, and aesthetic understanding of the fiction is also important. Not simply understanding the the parameters, evaluation of parameters in writing any fiction is not simply enough to describe, to talk more about fiction, to praise the aesthetic value of fiction. Okay, and the final point which James exclaims is that the natural talent is also equally important, and it should be excelling when it comes to writing fiction. Okay, natural talent, any person for that matter have the hidden talent of narrating. Okay, narration, maybe the content remains the same, but the way it is put forth, narrating is different from person to person. Every person cannot narrate in the same way. Can certain person have the ability. They have the excellent ability of narrating, and it is inherent. It is a natural talent according to James. And the rules are fine guide but cannot replace natural talent if it doesn't exist. Okay, if a person doesn't inhibit the technicalities of narrating the storytelling, then no one can help. Instead, it will be utter fail. So apart from these three arguments, there are many other observations done by James in the Walter Besant lecture session. At once, majorly, he says that an author must write from experience. Besant is of the, he says that any writer for that matter, he has to write from his own experience. James agreed, but he says that when a writer tries to tries to speak, tries to explain his experience, sometimes it so happen that if the writer doesn't experience certain circumstances, then it will be a utter failure on his part. So James says that yes, I agree that there should be there should we know a writer should know write what he has experienced, what he know about that experiences, but at the same time this should not control them into only writing about what they know, what they have done from their own perspective. Okay, secondly, he also moves on to say talk about the characteristics or characters of any heroic characters. The character should clearly illustrate. Besant says that characters should be clear. Their intentions, their wishes, their reasons for being in the fiction should be mentioned clear. But James says yes, but at the same time, the features which the character portray must be near to truth. It shouldn't be superficial, where the facts and figures which the character exhibits should not be away from the reality. Okay, that is what Henry James. Characters should be clearly illustrated, but at the same time, it should be near to reality. It shouldn't be away from the realistic reality of human nature. Okay, yes, and he moves on to speak on more elements, and he also says the story must have a moral principles. Besant say that the story must have a moral principles, but James is of the opinion that he feels that the story must be interesting and it should set rules dictating what constitutes a moral line, remove the art from the story. Okay, story should have must have the story moral storyline within it, but in teaching morals, you it will be twice removed, twice away from the story. Only teaching principles of life will not serve the purpose of the fiction. It sometimes morals and the story should go hand in hand. Not teaching, talking more on the story and not teaching more on principles. It should be balanced. So altogether, the writer Henry James says that a true artist will not be able to create an interesting story without imbibing morals in it. Yes, it has to be equally balanced. The story and the morals that the story teaches needs to be balanced. Okay, so he also the Henry James acclaims the important Victorian writer, that is Virginia Woolf. He says that we both writers are of similar standards or similar thoughts, because he says rules may be wrong and must be broken. Virginia Woolf says this. So rules, yes, it shouldn't confine you, and keeps away from the artistic values which the writer needs. Okay, aesthetic values. But by deciding the artistic mold uh, for a fiction, it should not delineate the aesthetic self as well. Okay, rules must be there, but not to the maximum extent. And Henry James, he also points out the Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle, and he calls their fiction wicked because it was filled with only imagination, which may mislead the readers, make them lazy. So he gives examples of Virginia Woolf, example of Greek philosophers. He speaks of most of them. So ultimately, Henry James is of the uh, purpose that any writer should write a novel, a good novel, and with a good beginning and end. The characters must be good, which is convincing and near to reality. Okay, characters should portray the realistic viewpoint of humans, and the writer's point of view and plot should be clear. Okay, these are four important points which Henry James brought in the art of fiction, and he has spoken more on the purpose of writing fiction. What are they? That is, there should be a good beginning and end. The characters should be true to themselves, means it should exhibit the true nature of humans. Okay, and the writer's viewpoint and the plot, which the storyline, which the story carry, must be clear and uh, precise. Okay, these are some of the important aspects Henry James speaks in the art of fiction. So yesterday I couldn't finish, but today I'll be talking on one American poetess, that is Emily Dickinson, and American writer Herman Melville's Moby Dick. So, Emily, for your based on your syllabus, you have five poems to be discussed. Due to time constraint, I'll be talking the important. I'll be giving lecture only on three poems written by Emily Dickinson because those are important for your examination. Usually, they ask question related to these poems, and it's highly impossible to finish all the poems and the novel. But today, I'll be dealing three important poems of Emily Dickinson and Melville's Moby Dick. So, as I told you, Emily Dickinson is an American poetess. Why Emily Dickinson is important to be read, and what are her traits, okay, poetic traits which she has employed in her poetry? That is more important when it comes when we read American poets. Yes. So Emily Dickinson was born in 1830 and died in 1886. And she is, as I told you, she is a 17th century American poet. And Walt Whitman and Emerson are the contemporaries to Emily Dickinson. Her poetry is hard and intellect. She speaks more on the practicality of life. She uses metaphysical themes in her poetry. She speaks more on the emotions. She speaks more on death. Death becomes an important theme in all the poems of Emily Dickinson. Okay, without love, without death, her poetry doesn't even exist. Emotion is the undercurrent of her intellect. Okay, she brings in emotions, high end emotions in her poetry. And when we speak about the biographical details about Emily Dickinson, without which we cannot understand her poetry, and without which you cannot find out the reasons why Emily Dickinson has written the poetry. Emily Dickinson, she survived a very turbulent life because she lived a life of seclusion, moving away from the social life. She, a major part of the life, she locked herself in a room, and she fall in love with writing poetry because her family was such family people who were also intellect. That's how Dickinson also gets influence. She was so secluded in her life. Once one best example to understand how intensely, how perpetually, or um, how in a measurable context, if we talk, like she did not know that there was a civil war going around in her place. That's how she used to. She simply walk up the stairs and locks her room. That is the only image which Emily Dickinson has left in all the poetry, all her poems. Okay, you can see her suffering self, alone, aloofness, seclusion. Okay, moving away from the social life. Is there any reason? Yes, she had a reason to do so because she was in love with a married man. So after she fall in love with a married man, she remained as a spinster, isolated from society, and her loneliness made her to write poetries. So she find contentment in her life in writing poetry. Okay, one of the critic, Alan Tatt, in her book Limits of Poetry, selected essays, she has spoken about Emily Dickinson as such. I quote, when she went upstairs and closed the door, she mastered life by rejecting it. See, Emily Dickinson, after she lost the beloved, lost in the sense she couldn't get married to the person because he was already married, the life which she rejected brought her identity, brought her claim, brought her recognition in the society. That is what one of the critic, Alan Tatt, has spoken about her poetries or her personality. So, in all her poems, suffering becomes educative. Suffering is not, she is not giving any morals out of her life. She is not trying to teach any moral things, principles to the readers. Instead, she is only bringing out the suffering as an educative tool, which means to say that she is bringing out some intellect progress or aspect through her poems. Suffering is educative, and it educates social life. That is what she has done. That is now uh, aspects which she has concentrated on. Yes. So I'll talk to you, as I told you, I'll be dealing with three major poems of hers. First, I'll be talking about The Soul Selects Her Own Society. Secondly, I'll be talking about I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died. And third poem is Because I Could Not Stop for Death. The first poem, The Soul Selects Her Own Society, is a lyrical poem. It has a simple words, simple lines where you can easily understand the emotion of the poetess. Okay, as the title itself says, the soul selects her own society. The soul refers to the soul of the poet, and the soul of the poet is selecting its own society. Society is not society as such, what it exactly means. Society is the space which is selected by the poetess. What sort of society Emily Dickinson has selected for herself in her life is that poetry. Poetry is a escape. Poetry is confession to her. Confession. It has enabled it. It is a mode. It is a medium to bring out the emotion to the public platform. She has written more than 1,800 poems. Emily Dickinson, to her credits, she has written more than 1,800 poems. But hardly 300 poems are being read, and majorly only few are prescribed and few are talked more about in her poems. Okay, and in the poem, as I told you, Emily Dickinson, she tries to select her own society. Society may be the space which she desires, she want to be. And she also is, as I told you, death has become the predominant concept or image which she has created for herself. In more major poems, in other rest two poems, she personifies death. She gives the element of human being, and she also sees, she is trying to see, praise, fall in love with death. Okay, without the element of death, majorly Emily Dickinson poems are not discussed, nor not cannot be understood. Okay, so this poem, I'll just read the first four lines. The soul selects her own society, then shuts the door to her divine majority, present no more. See the simplicity of the lines. At her low gate, unmoved, an empire be kneeling upon her mat. So she gives an image of a man who is kneeling down to take the speaker on a date. Okay, you can understand. I hope you can understand what is date. Then it was said to be courting. Okay, courtship. So she is visualizing, she is imagining that a person is kneeling down upon a mat for her, waiting for the time. Okay, so here she is giving, she is desiring for the things which she did not had in her life. She is imagining, she is envisioning, she is imagining a person, a loved beloved. And later in the poetry, she says that it is none other than the death, sorry, none other than the God. She is trying to bring out the divine romantic love, okay, in the poem. Emily's choice of a life of seclusion, she withdraws from the society to live a secluded life. The emotional crisis in her life depressed her very much. She closed the door on the wide world, the pausing chariots and kneeling emperor. The soul preferred her own small circle. The soul society is the chosen one. Poetry written was an absorbing passion with her. She took no note of her socio-political upheavals of her time, and she even renounced marriage. The chariot and the emperor may be interpreted as the temptation of society which distract her attention. Okay, a person who is near her upon her mats is also an image of distraction. Okay, society is trying to distract her. The society is not allowing her to live in a society she desires to. Okay, this is a distraction. The one she refers to is the in the poem maybe as a regarded as a lover. No direct reference is given about the individual, but the divine lover might be probably God. She is waiting for the God to attain immortality, probably. Okay, the soul is personified and it has the attribution of women. Okay, the soul is referring to the soul of the lady who is desiring for the divine lover. She is majestic and dignified, and she has shut the door for the outer world. Emily Dickinson, who is writing the poem, is not, she is stating the reasons for why she has closed, why she has shut the door on others, because someone is already there. Okay, and she doesn't want the negative interpreters just to enter the room and destroy her solitudeness. Okay, her divine space which she is living in. She closed the door on the divine majority. She closed the valves of her attention. She turned a heart of stone. So Emily Dickinson is becoming harder and harder after many experiences, after many turbulent experiences. And the choice of the words in the poem is also very interesting. The words like emperor chooses one, her own society. So she has consciously taken the words which seems to be which refers to the problem of choice. Emily Dickinson, as a woman of any age or any age means era, okay, has definitely faced many problems, which is where society might be criticizing her, judging her, being opinionated about her. But Emily Dickinson has taken a hard step, and she has, whatever might be the opinions outside, she has taken her stance for her life, and she is trying to lead whatever there might be problems. It might be a hard road of choice, but path of choice, but still she is standing for the decisions which she had made for her life, for not getting married and shutting down doors for others to the social life. She becomes so hard, and it is not making her weak. Seclusion, the period of seclusion or the time of seclusion, staying away, it is not making her weak. Instead, it is making her even stronger. Okay, so the soul is in the poem is an image of a queen. She thinks she is a queen because emperor is waiting outside for her, just to give a glimpses. Her glimpses is much of value. Okay, so this is a small talk understanding of the soul selects her own society. Coming to the second poem of Emily Dickinson, that is, I heard a flight bus when I died, is a poem on deathbed. Emily Dickinson, she gives a visualized images, or she picturizes the in the poem as such that any person can visualize. Okay, we can see instances in the poem, and this poem was published after the death of Emily Dickinson. She was not alive. Only after her death, this poem was published in 1862. And as I told you, this poem is written on her deathbed, which means to say her last moments. The poem gives you an image where the poet is sleeping on her deathbed, and she doesn't have energy, but at the same time she heard a fly which is buzzing and moving around at the very initial stanzas. Okay, three stanzas. The poem consists of four stanzas, four lines each. But in the initial three stanza, you can see how the poet is completely immersed in her state of being. on her deathbed. Okay, the atmosphere in the room is very calm and peaceful. There is no distractions. Many of the family members, friends are standing near her. Okay, she doesn't directly say that people of her family, members of her family, are in and around of her during the time she was attaining death, last moments of her life. But the line where she says that she was signing some of the wills, okay, uh, means the legal documents that where her property should be given to so and so person. She was signing a will. There is a line in the poem. Please read the line. Each and every line of the poem is very much important because poetry lines will be asked for annotations. Okay, please read the lines. Emily Dickinson poems, at least the poems which I am discussing, is very much important. They have, you just go through the question paper, they have repeatedly asked these poems. Okay, especially I heard of Fly Bus when I died. So the silence, there is a silence in the room because the person is attaining death. And when the poet look the face of the family members, she sees that people are ready to accept the reality. Means they very well know that she is not going to be leave, not going to be alive. Okay, and they are ready to accept the truth. So the which doesn't mesmerize. It's not a point of surprise to the poetess because that is part and parcel of anyone's life. Okay, they were waiting for the final movement of the speaker's life, and they are ready for what was going to happen. And as though they were looking at uh, the poet, as though they were looking for the arrival of the god or for some saintly figure who will take her life away from the place she is staying. So at that moment, she has signed the will. People are ready to take their property, proportional property, from the poet. But the speaker, she noticed a fly, and it started buzzing. So it is the place where silence is there. If a person hears some buzzing sound, it will definitely distract any of the person. So here the poetess gets distracted by the buzzing sound of the fly. Okay, the sound reminds her of something. The sound which she hears reminds of her state of being. She can't, she is immovable now. It is disturbing the speaker's patience, timely wait. And the fly did not keep buzzing, it also started flying. And it come between the light, the outside light, with that of speaker. And the fly blocked the light from reaching the speaker. See, it blocked, it's completely blocking the light emitting from the other direction. And the light coming from the windows also started fading away. Light is the symbol of life. Light is the symbol of energy. So, poet, through the element of fly, she uses the image of fly to the life, to the life. Okay, so here, as the light fades away, even our high eyes, the open eye, also started closing forever. It closed forever. So that is the last, in the fourth stanza. You can see how the fly disturbs the speaker, and how the fly helps, stands as a symbol for the end of life. Okay, end of life. So here the poem is very important because This is considered to be deathbed poem. Okay, and it was published posthumously. Coming to the third poetry which I am supposed to discuss, that is Because I Could Not Stop for Death. This poem speaks about the afterlife and speakers travel with death, which is personified. Okay, in this poem, Emily Dickinson personifies death. What is personification? Personification is giving, it's a stylistic literary device used to give life to a lifeless object. Death here doesn't have life in reality, whereas to Emily Dickinson, it becomes an educative mode of understanding life. Suffering becomes, and death, she sees it as companion. Okay, for Emily Dickinson, death becomes companion. She sees all her qualities of a companion in death. Okay, for her, death is not a terror. Emily Dickinson, for her, death is not a terror. Instead, it is a companion for her. Okay, so here in the poem, as I told you, the speaker speaks about the afterlife. Now, the poet is dead. Okay, she has attained the physical death, but what happened to her soul? So answer for that question is found in the poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death. So what has happened to the soul? What the soul is doing after its after the body is dead? What happens to the body exactly? It goes to the grave. It will be cremated. It will have its end. But the soul, we don't know what will happen. But Emily Dickinson has given a imaginative, her own description about what will happen to her soul after death, after life of her death. And the speaker travels with the personification of death. So Dickens imagines that there is a person outside the door of hers and is waiting for her in a chariot. Okay, that is the image which she creates in the poem. Okay, a person is there who is standing outside the door and he is uh, waiting with a chariot, as though a person is waiting for her to take for outing, for her to go on a long ride. She imagines it as such. So here, the speaker in the poem is too busy to meet death, to approach towards death. And death comes in a form of a gentleman to pick her up in a chariot. The carriage include no one except these two people, that is death, personified death, and the poetess herself. And they are traveling all alone. The civility of the death is, she imagines the civility means the etiquettes, the body etiquettes of a person. It's just similar like that of a death. Sorry, the civility of the death is similar to that of the civility of a person. The way they welcome, greet, wish, spend time, behave, everything is just similar as that of humans. Okay, the civility of death is gentleness of the poet. Okay, he drives which provides ease. Yet crosses a town where the children are seen playing and there are fields with full of, they witness the serenity of the setting sun. As the sun sets, the speaker feels the chill of the night and believes that she is not properly dressed for the occasion, date with death. The chariot here you see that what happens with the chariot and the poet. Chariot is moving, flying above the sky, and they see that children are playing, and the fields which is full of green, and they also witness the setting of the sun. Okay, the serenity of the sun, setting sun, and in that light, as the light is getting faded, they become chill. The night is becoming cold, and it is already getting dark. The atmosphere is getting dark, and as she feels chill, she thinks that she's not wearing a proper dress for the move for the date which she is going along with the death in the chariot. And they halt near a house. Okay, they halt near a house where it appears like a mound. The house which they stopped appears like a mound, and it doesn't have a roof. It is a ground, but it doesn't have a roof. And the earth is cornice was nothing. It was nothing, means what the house should design, it was not so. It was simply a mound of earth. Then the poet realizes that it is not the house, it is her crematory. Okay, she's already engraved in it, and she realized that she is dead. She has attained death centuries before, and she is not alive. So this is how the poem ends, because I could not stop for death. Okay, so the first poem speaks, the soul selects her own society, speaks about her divine love for the God and her choice of leading a secluded life. And the second poem, I heard a fly buzz when I died, as a poem written on her deathbed, where she sees her family, friends, and she has signed the uh, will. She has already signed the will, but the fly interrupts between the light and her life. And as the light fades, she also attains death. And coming to the third poem, that is because I could not stop for death, she personifies death. And she personifies death as her lover, who is taking out for a date. It is death is courting the speaker here. Okay, death is taking her out uh, in a chariot to see the neat beauty of the nature and the serenity of the setting sun. Okay, so this how she speaks, but ultimately as she moves near a house, it was not a perpetual house. Instead it was a mound. Okay, mud mound. And she realized that the poet realizes that it is not the graveyard, it is a graveyard, but she has already attained death centuries before. Okay, so these are three important poems you need to read at least for your examinations. They'll definitely ask questions from these poems. Coming to the novel. Okay, novel is also equally important. There will be a choice, but you need to at least read important text. Okay, so I'll be talking on Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Okay, Herman Melville is an American novelist, short story writer, and is considered to be a transcendentalist writer as well. What is the story of Moby Dick is very much important. Moby Dick's story is about a white whale. Okay, it's a story about revenge. It is a story of capturing a, a whale in a sea. Okay, white whale in a sea. Here, Moby Dick is a name. It's a name of a whale given by Herman Melville. And the people who go on a voyage on a board is uh, is remembered, is narrated by the narrator Ismail. Ismail is the narrator of the story. Okay, so now revenge becomes the central theme in Herman Melville's novel. What appears to be retribution for a long leg becomes something more as Ahab's desire for revenge consumes him and all those around him. He becomes a slave to his passion. Moby Dick was published in 1851. Okay, and the book, as I told you, narrator is Ismail. Okay, the book is all about Ismail narration of how Moby Dick was captured by Ahab, Equeb, Ismail himself. Okay, so he here Ismail is not only talking about the story of how Moby Dick is was captured, was it successfully captured or not, but it was also a revenge story of Ahab, Ahab. Ahab. Ahab is also a sailor who is also a catcher of whale. Ahab here had a revenge against Moby Dick because Moby Dick was the reason for his uh, dysfunction in his leg. Okay, he had lost one of his leg due to Moby Dick. When he had went to a voyage, he had lost his legs. Henceforth, along with for the next time, the next his succession in the next term, he wanted to capture and kill Moby Dick, which did not happen so. The story starts with the opening line of the story is "Call me Ismail." Ismail is narrating the story to the people who are on the board of Pickwick. Pickwick is the name of the ship. It has an important significance in the story, and it is a definite question in the examination. Okay, and here, so Ismail, as the words of Ahab, all the people, Ahab, Equeb, okay, Ismail, all this have started their sail from in their Pickwick ship. As they move, be Ismail being a school teacher, but also he has landed up as a sailor. He wanted to hunt Moby Dick because he wanted to gain fame. But the intention of Ahab, the owner of the Pigwid ship, had a different intention. It is of the revenge. Meanwhile, in the middle of the story, you can see that Ismail uh, uh, tried to pacify Ahab for not taking revenge of Ismail because Moby Dick started uh, attacking the Pickwick ship many a times. Even the people who are in the ship, they started attacking them, attacking Moby Dick. In this rivalry, Moby Dick damaged the ship very badly, and the ship sink in the sea. Okay, they searched entire the sea, and the ship sink. But at the end of the story, you see only Ismail got survived. Okay, let me introduce the characters, important characters. Ismail is a sailor, and Equib, he is also a person, he is a strange person. He has a tattoo all over his body. So these people are setting sail and they have become friends. Okay, and here as they sail, they have reached to Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean as well. The only motto of Ahab is that Ahab only want to catch fish. That is the mission in which they have started their sail. Along with Ismail, Ahab, and Equib, there was one another person in the boat, that is carpenter. It doesn't have a name in the novel. He was also there. Two people had assigned job to the carpenter. One is uh, Ahab, who has instructed carpenter to construct the wooden leg, because he doesn't have a leg, which is damaged by Moby Dick, the whale. Henceforth, as they, it will take time. Setting a sail on the sea will take months together. It is not days; it is months together. So he had instructed the carpenter to make a fine wooden leg, and Quick had also ordered carpenter to build a coffin, because as they set sail, with quick health got deteriorated. He seems though as though he will not survive for a longer time. So coffin was built in the sea. It's on the sea itself. Then there is also an important significance of the coffin in the play. You need to remember that. I'll tell you why. So all the five people set as a team. They started the sail, and the team leader was Fidala. He was a dangerous person. Now they have moved towards the sea near the Africa, and they have moved to Japan as well. They are simply searching, they go on searching for Moby Dick. But for months together, Moby Dick was not uh, found in the sea. And one fine one fine sign which Ahab feels that somewhere he feels that Moby Dick is near to him. So what they did at first, they were searching, and it was for the Ahab. He could identify that this is the Moby Dick, that is the way. And after 3 days, after identifying, till the time they had a fight with the Moby Dick, it took 3-4 days. Okay, after 3 days, after rigorous searching of Moby Dick, they could at last find it was moving in and around of the Pickwick ship. First shot, they almost shot 4 times towards Moby Dick. Okay, just to kill it. The first shot hit the other boat. First shot was missed. The second shot was towards Fidal, who was the team leader. The second shot killed Fidal, and the third shot, uh, it going to try. So Starbuck tells that Ahab that we are leaving. The third shot started damaging the ship even more, and it also almost killed Ahab. Okay, the person who had revenge towards Moby Dick. It almost killed Ahab, and but his madness to kill Moby Dick did not subside. It did not calm down. He did not. He's not ready to calm down. Okay, so the fourth shot was a trapping shot. Okay, the boat is already sinking. The person, the team leader, Fidal, is already killed, and Ahab is almost killed, but still Ahab is not ready to listen Ismail or any other person. So the left out is Quickig and Ismail apart from Ahab. As the ship sinks, all the people get sunken inside the sea, but it was only Ismail who survived the turmoil. Why? Because it was the coffin which helped him to survive. Coffin, it was floating after the entire ship gets sunken in the sea. It was only the coffin which was floating, and by the use of coffin, he survived. So only after the survival of from killing of Moby Dick, he is narrating the story Moby Dick. So after the fourth shot, the ship is almost destroyed by the gunshots, as well as Moby Dick had hit the ship very hardly that it started sinking. That was a trapping shot. Now Ahab is also dead. Rachel is another ship. He survived. His life was survived by Rachel, another ship, and this is how the novel ends. But the novel is a commercial failure. It did not had attained success. It did not become a bestseller novel. Why? Because people are of the opinion that the whales are not so dangerous. Okay, whale are not there. It is a, even though it is huge in its body structure, but it is not going to harm any human beings when we look at the novel as such. Okay, it is not going to harm people, or henceforth the novel was a commercial failure. It was not sold. The books, the novel was not sold. Okay, the novel also deals with how Ismail, by giving the revenge story of Ahab, narrating the revenge story of Ahab, the captain of the ship Piquet, or owner of the ship Piquet, he also gives you a elongated description of the nature of the sea, creatures who are powerful. Creatures on the sea. And it also, the novel also teaches that how nature and animal creatures, any creature for that matter, can be powerful than man. Nature is, in our corona circumstance, you have already come across that instance, that uh, uh, aspects, that nature is more powerful than man, and man has also understood that money will not fetch you anything. Money, we had money during corona period. People had money for survival, but there was no food, there was no proper living, or we were confined within our own self, within our own houses. Okay, so even people who are strangers on daily basis, the family members, they, even though they come together, we couldn't survive for more number of time, for longer period. So creatures, animal creatures, are more powerful than the man, despite his intelligence, weapon power, and capacity, unlimited capacity. Okay, so Moby Dick, as a novel, teaches you many things, that nature is supreme. Revenge is not going to help the human for its survival. And man, even though has all the capacities, unlimited capacity, he can't fight against the nature. So Ismail was the only person who survived in the novel, in the journey, and he was survived because of the coffin which he had in the inside the Pickwick ship. So sometimes overconfidence, which is not reasonable, it's certain, it's very much true that overconfidence is not going to help anyone, and the certain actions which are not reasonable and end will be disaster. So the end of the Moby Dick is very disaster. It took away many lives on the uh, novel. Okay, so you understand that this text is very much important, because it gives you a moral uh, stances. It teaches you the principles of nature and principles of human life as well. Okay, so for this day, I hope you have understood Emily Dickinson poetry and uh, Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Okay, it's a very important novel. It is a, there will be a definite question on Moby Dick, and Emily Dickinson poetries, which I discussed, will definitely appear for your examination. Please do read it. Okay, Please read I Heard a Fly Buzz, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, and The Soul Selects Her Own Society. These are all important poems of Emily Dickinson. And I hope you have also understood Henry James, the art of fiction. So all the qualities which the writer talks about is reflected in Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Okay, I hope you have understood. Any question? Any questions? Okay, I hope you have understood. Tomorrow also, if you have any questions, please write your questions for tomorrow. Tomorrow will again, I have class with you around 2 to 3. Definitely, you can post your questions and we can discuss. Okay, thank you.